Why don't you want me to start with, you want me to start with my beer story?
Your what, I'm sorry?
My beer story?
Yeah, that was great. Actually, I was thinking we had the camera rolling when you were saying that. And you can just look at me. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well, let's see. I guess I didn't know I'm Bill Quickert. But we moved to San Bruno. We bought a little house. We scraped together enough money to get a down payment. Bought a little house in Rollingwood. And I guess this would have been in November of 1955. And we would go back on up to San Francisco to church, where we had gone to church there, and take the kids on up Sunday school. And I guess we were pretty regular. We were pretty regular. I won't say we were there every Sunday. And I guess it was in January, late January. I should know the exact date, but I don't know. It could have been the 1st of February. That I was doing something I normally wouldn't do, and really haven't done in the past since. And I was watching fights, and I had a can of beer. And there was a knock on our door, and the fellow came up to the door and introduced himself to, I guess, to my wife at first, and she brought him into the living room, and he introduced himself as Roy Payton. He was an organizing pastor. He was going to start a new Presbyterian church in the area. And he had received our name from a list of Presbyterians that lived in San Bruno. And so here I was, quite embarrassed. I think I was 27 years old or something or other at the time like that. And Roy, we got along pretty good. We got along pretty good. I guess he understood. He was quite a person. And so he announced, I guess, a short while later that we were going to have a little meetings. I know his wife, and he came up about a week later and visited with us. And then, I guess one of the very first meetings, his daughter, Fran, babysit our 3 kids that we had, the 3 at the time, while we went to this little meeting. And so then there was discussion and such, and I guess there was about another meeting. And then it was decided, well, we should really be looking for a place to take an hold of service. And so there was a group probably of 8 or 9 of us there. And I said, I've got an idea. I said, when I was in high school, I occasionally rode my bicycle from Daly City down to San Bruno, and I helped clean up the Fireman's Hall. And let's see if I can go by and see the ceilings and see if they're still at least renting out the Fireman's Hall. So I guess a fellow by the name of Jerry Marler and I were given the assignment to try to find a place. And so Jerry was going to look, and so I looked, and I found that yes, that we could use the Fireman's Hall. We could use it on Sundays. So with that, I think Jerry came on up with using the Carpenter's Hall on San Bruno Avenue. We're using it for Sunday school, because even by that time we'd had quite a few children, involved in this. So the first Sunday came along, and some of these stories have been told, and we didn't have a pulpit. And so here we were in the Fireman's Hall, and of course there was smoke odor and such. I think it smelled like beer too, And so the first service, I remember I and a fellow named Al Watson were the ushers and such, and there was no pulpit. And I forgot who got it, but somebody wound up with a cardboard box, and Roy Payton puts a cardboard box out there to take and use as a pulpit. He leans on the thing crushes, Roy was always full of his jokes, But so this really started us off. And I guess that when at the end of the service, Roy stopped me, Dr. Payton, Roy stopped me anyhow, and he said, I'd like to have you come to a meeting this afternoon. We're going to have a steering committee. The steering committee will take and guide the church during the next period of time. So I felt quite honored as this young kid, being asked to do this along with some of these older fellows. And of course, women weren't allowed at that time to have any decision making. But So now from that we had our start. We had our start. And I think the amazing thing about it was that right at that time, shortly thereafter, within the first month, the Women's Association was formed. And Roy started a young couples club, the Mariners Club, and which we were involved with. And then it got into, the Fireman's Hall was a little bit of a hassle. We had some potluck dinners. We started out calling Tri-Cities Presbyterian Church. And we had a potluck down at the, I don't know, the Fireman's Hall I guess it was down at the Fireman's Hall. Anyhow, at the potluck dinner, they came on up that we really should have possibly a different name for Bethany, for the church, instead of Tri-Cities Presbyterian. And we had a retired minister, Lloyd Husak. And Lloyd Husak said, he said, what I really want to see here, I want to see Bethany. He says, Jesus came to Bethany to rest, and he says, I would like to see Bethany. And so we had a vote on the naming of the church. There were a few others mentioned, but it was unanimous that it was going to be Bethany. And so that was the actual start of Bethany, probably about a month and a half, 2 months later. Well, it was a little bit of an inconvenience having the Sunday school located about a half a mile away from where the church service was, and back and forth. And the Fireman's Hall wasn't the greatest, as I say, the odors and such. And we had a couple of people that were involved with the Navy. And I don't know whether Emmett Pollitt or Charlie Jackson contacted the Navy, and because they had their base here down at Tanforan. And anyhow, what happened was we secured the right to take and use the chapel there. Well, this was interesting. The chapel had been not used for a period of over 10 years, and it was filthy. I mean, it was really filthy. It's just dirt all over and such. But the commander of the base there happened to be a Presbyterian, and so he saw to it that we could get some paint. And so I, with a bunch of us younger fellows and such, and then the older ones too, painted the church. We painted the inside. One of the things it did not have is they had taken out all the pews. And so we needed some seating. And so this commander said, well, the old auditorium, there's seating over there. But the auditorium was on a sloped floor. And so there are these twin fold-up wooden chairs and such. And said, well, he says, I can't let you just have them. You have to buy them. It'll cost you $2 for the chairs. So it's $1 each for a chair. So we bought, I forget what it was. I think we bought, I don't know, we could have bought, probably was a good 300 chairs or so. And so we went on over there, and I remember at the time, again, next to the theater was a bowling alley. And I remember a group of us were bowling in the bowling alley. again, that hadn't been used at the base. But yeah, we got the chairs on over there. But you've got to realize that these chairs were intended to be there on a slope. And so when you set them on the flat, you were sitting back like this. And so, the stories would go that, they would take and put you to sleep, that the pastor wasn't really up to things. I think another interesting thing about the Navy base was that it had confessionals for the Catholics. And actually it had an altar, and it had confessionals. And the kids used to get a heck of a lot of fun out of playing in this doggone confessionals, And just a lot of memories. We had work parties. We built partitions and such to take and separate out in the classrooms and such. And then after a number of months, again, we didn't have any heat. No, there was no heat in the building, and because they shut the boilers down. And so anyhow, there was a building next to it called the library. And so we secured the library also, and we're using the library then for Sunday school. Although there were Sunday school rooms in the church, and it's probably as noted from the picture, we had quite a few people. You know, it was just, Roy Payton was tremendous at knocking on doors. I mean, he just brought in, he went on and out there and just pounding on doors, person after person. We had what we called the Tuesday callers, where we got these lists from the welcome wagon, and we would go on out in pairs and invite people to come into the church and such. And it was really a time of real growth there. But as I say, I guess the next thing came along. We were, you know, getting pretty happy and satisfied, and so we organized. I guess it was September 30th, 1966. And so we had all the dignitaries coming from Presbyterian and such for it and such. And I know there's again a funny story about that, where they had cakes. And the cakes were over in the library. And oh well, I'm going to tell you one little story about the library. Two more little ones. One is I say, Roy Payton was a character. And I remember we were painting over there with oil-based paints. We were painting in the restrooms. And we were painting without any ventilation. And all of a sudden, Roy Payton comes up and says, you know, he says, I think I'm drunk. Dignified Roy Payton, I think I'm drunk. And it was just the fumes and such, you know, from being closed in these restrooms and such. It's the same, but Roy was something else. But I guess another interesting event there is I started to talk about the our day when we organized, and all of a sudden the women go over just toward the end of the ceremony and find out that ants had come on in. We've had an ant problem here in this building. But ants had come on in. They're all over the cakes and all over the little sandwiches and hors d'oeuvres and such like that. So the women were there picking the ants and wouldn't let anybody come in until they got the ants out of the food. So you know, it was just a real joy, the fellowship and such, you know, that we had there. I get tearful, you know, thinking about it. It was great. But we then started in the dream, you know, the dream to take and have our own building, because as you came into the Navy base, well, we did have a sign we put out in the middle of El Camino, and I think the sign's still downstairs, an A-frame sign, you know, with the Presbyterian Church and such. But there was a hindrance because as you came into the Navy base, you had to go past the guards. And you had to be okay by the guards before you came in. And some people sort of thought that was sort of a hindrance. And, you know, we naturally wanted to have our own building. We started out and we again looked, I remember going on out and measuring different lots and such and different things, and a group of us, we had different locations came on up. We had one in South San Francisco, back up a ways, and off of El Camino. Didn't particularly like it. And then a fellow named John Muzzy with the Presbytery, or with the Synod, had made deals with different developers where he would find a landlocked piece of land, and he would take and tell the developer, you know, give me an access line into there, and we'll take these for church purposes, and we probably quite possibly got some sort of a write-off on it. Excuse me, I have to wipe my nose for a second here.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No, let me get you a little table for your glass thing.
Yeah, you want to put your glass down?
I'm moving.
Okay. was going to bring it for you anyway.
Yeah, you can have the option.
Okay. Okay, I got a table. Let's see, where was I?
Looking for lots. And
looking for lots. Yeah, you know, the ideal thing we knew on a location would be El Camino Real, or the main thing. But anyhow, he came up with this lot here, and we had one access. You probably know these sort of pie-shaped lots. And so we had something like about a 45-foot frontage and such. And so we looked at it and we thought, oh boy, you know, what can we do here? And we'd started a building fund campaign. And we made the decision at that time to take and buy another 4 lots. So we have 5 lots out here in the frontage. And then along with the 2.5 acres, the initial lot, and then 2.5 acres back here. And so this gave us a site. Site was not graded. The slope came on, as you probably can see from the house uphill on down. So they came on in and graded. And one of the things that happened during the grading is that somewhere along the line, the contractor left one of the graders, or the grader out on the street or near the street or something like that, left it unattended, and it rolled down the street and hit one of the houses down here. Yeah. But yeah, so it was great. It was graded. And we started in the first construction. We started in, and the bids came on in at something like $148,000. We had just a little over $100,000. And so then it got into, what do we do? Do we hold off? Do we not build? And we decided, no, we're going to go ahead. Burlingame Church gave us $10,000, which brought us on up to the point where we had roughly $108,000 or $110,000 that time. So we went ahead. But in doing so, we had to take and cut back. We had to not finish the lower floor. It was completely open with nothing down there. We had to, on the parking lot, we had to only have a strip of pavement coming in and then around and going on out. We were to have a retaining wall that would have been in the median strip there to give us a little more parking. We did do one thing at that point to get us off the tax rolls. We brought in loads of gravel. And we put them clear out to the street. By putting that in the whole parking lot area that we currently have and on out street, we were able to take that off the tax rolls. So we did do that. But the building of the church came along. It was, I remember walking on out here when the place was graded, walking on out to the end of the parking lot here on the north end, and just sinking down to my knees into the mud. Yeah, because there's been a lot of, it was just filling on off and such, and so there were some difficulties in the construction of getting the ground stable. As I indicated, the building is extremely stable because it rests on a foundation that goes down below 8 feet below the level of the lower floor. And actually underneath that is a layer of crushed rock that goes all the way underneath the building, and with drainage that goes on out to the hill. So the building is good and solid and stable. I mean, Bethany is solid. Okay, let's see, where am I got there? So we then come into the end of the building. We come on in. We had only the subfloor sitting here. We did not have linoleum or anything else on it, or tile. We had a church. We had a bare room for a kitchen. We did have 2 bathrooms, and we had our folding chairs that sat at a slant, okay? Well, we came along, we grew pretty good. I remember right off the bat, the women said, you know, we're gonna have the kitchen finished before you guys finish the downstairs room. And they did. They did. The women got together and the women collected their money and the women did the kitchen, and the women got the kitchen done before we did the downstairs room. The downstairs, we put up all the partitions. You can probably see the sloppy work with the drywall and such. Well, you know, we did the best we could. I think we did a pretty good job. I'll always remember that we also had to delete the heating downstairs. And the heating is probably, you know, it's a hot water system and such, and with these fins and pipes. And I remember again the joy of getting, I guess, banged up on those things and putting those in. We did the electrical downstairs. So we put the whole thing down there. It took us a period of time, but we did it. We did it. We did it. It's been a joy. It was a dream to see it done. And like we said, there's more dreaming to come for Bethany. And it's just amazing what was accomplished and such during those first few years, from January or February of '56 until '60 when we came into the building. That's the first start of Bethany.
To me, it's just incredible to think that you guys built this with your hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You didn't bring in somebody else. You didn't.
Yeah, no,
to me,
no.
that's just amazing.
When we put in the tile, I was down on my knees doing it.
Do people know that? Did the younger church members know that?
I don't know.
Is there a way you could say that? That you guys built this church with your own hands? I think the younger members need to know that. I think that's to me that's amazing. It's fascinating.
I feel like Dave and I have become like armchair Bethany historians through this. It's really been a pleasure.
I don't think they know that. I mean, now today, don't you bring in a contractor, you pay the workers, like you don't do it yourself. You guys did it.
No, we did it.
Could you say that somehow in a
Well, yeah. I guess the question is, that we did it. Yes, we did. We did it. We put in the electric downstairs. We put in the walls downstairs. There were no partitions. It was just a wide open space down there. We put in the bathrooms. We got down on our knees and we put down the floor tiles. In fact, there were floor tiles downstairs before there was a tile upstairs here. We put down the floor tiles here initially that are actually underneath these carpets and such. We did it. We did it, and it was just a lot of people working together. I must say that we were very fortunate that we had a lot of younger people, and that maybe things weren't quite as complicated, 50 years ago, 45 years ago, than what they are now, with people's time. But we did. I'm proud of it. Some of it.
If you could think back, when you think about it, why did you do all that?
Why did we do it all?
I mean, that's a lot.
Well, it was just, I guess it was, we wanted to build a church. We've seen, we've been in different churches. We've seen some magnificent churches. There are some magnificent Presbyterian churches around. I'll always remember my grandparents' church in Sacramento. Just magnificent things. But I think, we did make a decision at one point at one of these meetings. I remember sitting there, and we were a group of us before we were deciding, are we going to build a fellowship hall, or are we going to build a sanctuary? And we tore ourselves back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Yeah, sanctuary is nice. Sanctuary is what we really want. But to be practical, to take and serve. We can worship in the fellowship hall. We can worship. The worship, believe me, it wasn't that anything to worship where we initially started as we have now, with the carpet, with the nice seating and such, and with the revamped chancel and such. But it was, we felt that we could take and do other things with the fellowship hall. And I think this is, again, a period of time when people had more time, and I think there was a better attendance in probably some of the dinners and different things of that nature. Although it's still great, you know, Thanksgiving dinner's coming on up and the place will be packed. But we did it. I guess the love of God, just wanting the place to worship, yeah. But we did feel that it didn't have to be a magnificent place. Oh, sure, we'd like to see it, but I don't know if I really want to see it. I'd like to see something. You know, if we, you know, one of my dreams is that we can take and do more here. We have the ability to build. Not as the master plan shows with a chapel and then a sanctuary out toward the street. You know, we'd probably never get by with that, with the parking and such. But we've got a flat area out here just to the west of the church that we could take and use for a small sanctuary. Possibly be better off with a smaller sanctuary. We're closer together. I don't think we need this large a sanctuary anymore. Or a building out there to take and use for adult daycare or for different things, different natures. And so, you know, there's dreams that we can, you know, continue to build. And I'm certain when the time comes and such that the people will get down on their hands and knees and lay that tile again. Yeah.
I just think that's, I mean, you guys were obviously just driven to do this and really.
Yeah, well, it's
building this community, right?
It's our church.
Yeah.
It's our church. It's our church. You know, it's you know, like I think I alluded to you initially. You know, I think one of the things that hurts. I forget how many people we've had come through here. We've had some 1,900 members come through over the years. And I think the thing that's hurt is that so many people have come into the area. And it's been more or less just a stopping point. And because the housing was lower in price, people got in initially. People did get into the area. People, again, didn't possibly realize the weather situation that there is here. I happen to have been born in San Jose, and my father in San Jose, and my mother in Berkeley. I grew up in Daly City. I knew what the fog line was. As I said, I rode my bicycle down to here, down to San Bruno. The fog line was always been at Sneath Lane. Now, I have to admit that we did move from the other side of the fog line to this side of the fog line. But again, the temptation was to take and move further south into better weather. But again, Bethany is the reason, one of the primary reasons we stayed here. I have to admit, doctors and such too, schools. But this is our church. I'm not going to leave it. I've been upset with different things over a period of time, but it's my church. And I think it was all of our churches, and this is why we did it. Yeah.
Like you said, a deep love for the church.
Yeah. And there were not just me, but believe me, you saw the pictures of the people in the Navy base, yeah, and many there, and many right this minute. We've got a lot of dedicated people here. Yeah.
A lot of active people.
Okay.
And a lot of hopes for Bethany, too.
Oh, yeah, we're going to do it. It's going to be done. It can be done.
It's just so impressive. It's I hit that point in life where a lot of my friends are starting to have kids. I'm hoping to be having kids soon. And yet, a lot of people, when they don't go to church for, you go with your parents when you're younger, then you stop for a while. A lot of people do. And then when you have kids again, you start thinking about it again. So a lot of my friends are shopping around for churches. It's just so funny to think, to compare what they do, which is go to a few different churches each weekend, or, compared to you guys who built your own one.
Yeah, I was as I say, my grandparents, my mother was Presbyterian and my father was Catholic. I guess when I was in about the 5th grade, my father said these kids are going to make their first communion. I had 3 sisters. So I made my confirmation. I made my first communion. Then in the 8th grade, just before graduation, my mother happened to be one that had to come up to school every so often. We lived a couple blocks away from school there in Daly City. She came on up and the principal had me out in the hallway. I'd been typically acting up as usual. And so then my dad says, we're going to straighten this kid out. And he made me go to a Catholic high school for 1 year. Well, my wife, now of 62 years, anyhow, had come into the 8th grade there, and she was the only thing I could think of as my wife, Skipper. And here I was going to have to go to a different high school. And it tore me up. Well, when we were married, decided to get married, she'd been Methodist. We went to a Catholic church, went to a Presbyterian church, we went to a Methodist church. And so she relented and said, well, okay, we'll be married in the Presbyterian church. Well, we're like so many couples, we were married. Geez, I don't know if we went back to church. Maybe we did a couple times. One day, we lived in San Francisco, and I came home and a neighbor met me at the door and said, Norma's not here. She took, Nancy got hit by a car in front of the house and took her to the hospital. And so, you make a few promises when you head to the hospital. And thank goodness she was not badly hurt. And so we started in then on a regular basis of going to Presbyterian Church on Ocean Avenue in San Francisco. And yeah. But anyhow, yeah. It's been a joy.
Your promise. When I started going to church, you built one.
Is there anything else that we didn't hit on that you'd like to talk about, or anything?
I don't know. I think I talked quite a bit. Anything else
I'm enjoying the stories.
Anything else you want?
You can keep talking all you want.
Yeah, well, there's been, as I say, I'm not going to talk about the different pastors and such. And
Yeah, no, that's
no, that's leave that out of it. As I say, there've been times here with even with Roy. I just don't tape this, but Roy was just too nice a guy. And he let everybody walk over him, and he tried to do everything himself. And we got a little bit disenchanted with Roy at one point. And I remember I and 2 other fellows, Charlie Jackson and Gene Wilson, went to Presbytery to complain about him. And actually, what's being used for an office now was used as a nursery. And Roy called us in and said, Bill, you're too young to know better. Charlie, you should know better. Gene, you only do what Gene says. Gene, you only do what Charlie says. And so we had quite a little discussion. So we had our little difficulties with Roy. I must say that the real satisfaction came when he died. His daughter asked me to do the eulogy. Yeah. He did have dementia. He was over in San Leandro for a period of time, and I would regularly go in and see Roy. Yeah, we've had, it's been some good relationships. Yeah. Gary, I'll just tell you guys just briefly on Gary. We had, we'd lost our pastor, George DeWeese. And so the committee was looking for an interim. And I dealt with Taco Bells. I supplied Taco Bells, one of my customers. And I had this customer as a Presbyterian, and when she would open her store, she would have her pastor give a blessing to her store. So she was opening this one down in Manor, down in Sharps Park. So I'm down there, and we were talking. I'd talked to him before, I guess, another one of her things and such. And so we're talking. He said, I understand you lost your pastor and such. And I said, yeah, no, we have. No, we're looking for an interim and such. He says, he says, I've got a young fellow that's a seminary student right now that, you might be interested in talking to. He's still in seminary. You might be interested in talking to him. And so over at Taco, I found out about Gary, and so the committee, I gave the name to the committee. And so Gary came on in. Gary was not ordained. He had another 6-8 months to go. And so Gary came on in, and we had Monty Brown, which is a great interim to guide him. And so Gary came on in and felt that I was the one that got him started here. As I say, we were buddies. I spent an awful lot of time over here. I guess starting, I have some real heart problems. So I'd be up here almost every day of the week, and he and I were buddies and just enjoyed each other. But Gary left, and it hurt when Gary left. But always kidded Gary. I said, Gary, someday you'll take and go on up to my grandfather's church in Sacramento. It's across from the Capitol. It cost over $500,000 to build in 1925. Oh yeah, it's a magnificent thing. Gary then, because his daughters had moved up to Sacramento, wanted to be with his grandchildren. And Gary had, I guess, about had it, And so Gary left and went on up there. Gary started going to Westminster. Gary then became associate pastor up there. And so then when Gary finally retired 2 years ago, year and a half ago, I got a kick out of it. Now, we were invited to come up there for his retirement from my grandfather's church, godfather and grandmother's church. And so, I felt greatly honored. We got on in there, and after the service, I was looking at some of the things where my grandfather's name is on plaques and such, and some pictures, and got on up to the fellowship hall up there where they had the dinner, and the place was packed. I didn't know if we were going to have a seat. So here's Gary up there with his family at the table. And stand up, and the minute he sees me, he's after me to come on up, sit there with him. So I got him up there, and he says, I says, you really? I says, what do you put me up here with you guys? He says, you're the guy that pulled the trigger. You got me started. Anyhow, I've had some good times. I've had some good times. Some good times. It's been a joy.
He gave you that spot at his table.
Huh?
He gave you that spot.
Yeah. And my wife.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant.
She's all important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
She's all important.
Absolutely.
Oh, no. If it hasn't been for her, I'm so fortunate. I'm so fortunate. I'm just so fortunate. Yeah, fortunate. Yeah.
I've only been married 9 years, and I say that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
I can imagine 62.
September 20th, 1942.
Wow.
This little blonde girl came in, and all the boys went crazy for her. All the boys in the school went crazy for her. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you were the lucky one.
Yeah. Very fortunate.